And so I remember at the age of 9, a teacher pointing to me, talking to another adult, saying, "That's the boy with the broken brain." Parents have to be very careful with the words they use because your external words become a child's internal words.
But your journey actually started off differently, right? You actually struggled at school.
I did. When people see me on stages that we've shared together or on video, they'll see me do these mental feats, right? Memorize, I'll have 100 people stand up and memorize their names, or 100 names or 100 numbers or 100 words forwards and backwards. But I always tell people I don't do this to impress you. I do this more to express to you what's possible, because the truth is every single person who's listening today could do that and so much more. I mean, we discovered more about the human brain, this, more in the past 10 years than the previous 1,000 years combined. And we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities and our own superpowers as you were. And I really do. I love your work because I feel like in this age of information, we're drowning in data, we're drowning in information, but we're starving for real wisdom. And so that's why I really appreciate it. But as you know, I grew up with learning difficulties. Some people are surprised to hear at the age of 5, I had a bad accident, head trauma, brain injury, and I had these learning challenges, if you were. I had bad focus. I had no memory to speak of. Teachers would have to repeat themselves 4, 5, 6 times, and then I wouldn't get it. I would pretend to understand, and I don't know if anyone could relate to that, but I had this imposter syndrome when I was a child, and it took me actually a few years just to learn how to read. I remember, I don't talk about this, but in school, in elementary school, all my friends, they got invited to be part of this MASP program because I always played with all the Dungeons and Dragons and the comic book geeks. And the only difference with them and me is I didn't have the grades. They're really, really smart, right? And but there was this group called MASP, and MASP stands for More Able Student Program. And it was me and my friend Joey. We weren't invited in this program, so we created our own little group, our own clique, and we called it LASP. And we were the Less Able Student Program. And so I remember at the age of 9, a teacher pointing to me, talking to another adult, saying, "That's the boy with the broken brain." And that was my label. And anyone who has a child, or anyone who was a child at one point in their life, parents have to be very careful with the words they use because your external words become a child's internal words. And that became my internal talk. Every time I wasn't picked for the soccer team, every time I did badly on a quiz and a test, which was all the time, I always said, it's because I have the broken brain. And that became my internal conversation. And I always tell people, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you argue for those limits, they're yours. And I had that all through school. I had such a bad fear I was painfully shy, not just introverted, but shy. Because when you feel like you're broken, you don't feel like you have anything to add in terms of values. I didn't have a lot of friends. I would just watch people and study them and just wonder, why was this person, so successful at school, or so popular, or picked for all these teams. And I was painfully shy. I remember, I don't talk about this a lot, but they pulled my parents in my English class in high school, and I was failing. And he was like, the teacher said, "Okay, I'll give you one chance. You did this extra credit report." And, and it was on Einstein and Da Vinci. And, I didn't know anything about them, but this is what's going to allow you to pass. And I was so excited because I put all my energy in there for months. And I did this book report, and I've never put all of my talent and time and focus into one project before. And the day I had to turn it in, I had it professionally bound. I mean, it was so proud of it because I'd never been good at anything. And at the end of class, the teacher's like, "I have a surprise for everybody. Jim, come up in front of the class and tell everyone about Einstein and Da Vinci." And I was so scared. I didn't realize I had to give a talk, a book report on this. So I said, I lied. I said I didn't do it. And after 3 months of pouring my heart and everything into it, my potential, if you will, I lied. I said I didn't do it because I was so fearful of keep getting in front of a group of people. I know public speaking is a big deal for a lot of people. And after, you could look at the teacher's face, she was so disappointed. And I was disappointed in myself also. But after the class left, I remember taking it out of my backpack and throwing it into the trash. And I felt like when I did that, I was also throwing away something else, like maybe my dreams, if you will. But at the age of 18, I thought I could turn it all around. I was lucky enough to get into college, university. I wanted to make a fresh start and show my family, show the world, show myself I could do it. And I did worse. And And at that time, I just doubled down, and I was just ready to quit. And a friend's like, hey, why don't you get some perspective before you tell your family you're quitting school? Come visit my family this weekend. I'm going home. And I did. And the family was pretty well off and happy and successful, if you will. And the father walks me around his property and says, Jim, how's school? And that's the worst question you could ask me. And I just start bawling. And I was like, I tell my whole story about the broken brain. He's like, Jim, why are you in school? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? What do you want to share in the world? And I honestly, I didn't have any clue, because it's funny, when you don't ask yourself that question, you don't have answers. That was one of the conversations that I had growing up. And I go to answer him, and he says, stop. He takes out a piece of paper out of his back pocket and makes me write it down. And you know how important it is to write and reflect. I've never did that before. But when I was done, I had this bucket list of all the things that I want to accomplish. And when I started folding the sheets, and he grabbed it out of my hand and he starts reading it. And I'm freaking out, because I wasn't expecting him to look at my deepest dreams. And when he's done, he's like, Jim, you're this close to everything on that list. And he spreads his fingers about a foot apart. And I was like, no way, give me 10 lifetimes. I'm not going to crack that list. And he takes his fingers and he puts them to the side of my head, meaning what's in between is really the answer, the key, the bridge, if you will, which was my brain. And he walks me into a room of his home, into a room I've never seen. You would love it. It's wall to wall, ceiling to floor, covered in books. And I'm phobic of books, right? I mean, I'm just not a good reader. Never finished a book in my life.
At that time.
Yeah, and this is like, now I read a book a day. I
Yes.
mean, they're my best friends. But they're like, a lot of people are afraid of snakes. It's like being in a room full of snakes. But what makes it worse, he starts grabbing snakes and handing them to me. And I started looking at these titles, and they're classics. There's these incredible biographies of men and women in history, and some very early personal growth books, like Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, all the classics, right? And he's like, Jim, I want you to read one book a week. And I was like, no way. I'm fighting for my limitations. I can't do that. I have so much schoolwork. And he's looked at me like, Jim, don't let school get in the way of your education. And I didn't realize this was a Mark Twain quote at the time. It's like over 25 years ago. And I was like, that's really insightful, but I can't commit to this. If I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to do it. And very smart man, he reaches into his pocket, and he still has my bucket list. And he starts reading every single one of my dreams out loud. And I don't know what it was, Jay, just imagine you're this insecure 18-year-old kid, and you start hearing your deepest dreams you never articulated out loud yourself, much less you hear it from another man's voice, and cant it out into the universe. And it messed with my mind and my heart, something fierce. And honestly, half that list were things I wanted to do for my family. My parents immigrated here from Asia. Typical story. We lived in the back of a laundromat, didn't speak the language, didn't have any money, education, any of that. And I wanted to do stuff for my family, all because of all their sacrifice. And with that leverage and understanding the importance of drive and motivation to get to do. I'm very curious what motivates people to do things. I don't believe knowledge is power at all. Its potential has the potential to be power, right? But all the podcasts, online programs, coaching, seminars, none of it works unless we work it. And so with that motivation, I agree to read one book a week. So fast forward, I'm back at school and I'm sitting at my desk. I have a pile of books I have to read for midterms, and I have a pile of books that I promised to read. And I couldn't even do one pile of books. So what do? I sacrifice. I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't work out, I don't spend time with friends. I live in the library, and it's not very sustainable. And I end up passing out one night out of sheer exhaustion. I fall down a flight of stairs in the library, hit my head again. And then I wake up 2 days later in the hospital. And at this point, I went down 117 pounds, the scariest point in my life ever. I thought I died. And, when you have a near-death experience, it makes you think about, deep about who you are. And, I think a lot of people have, honestly, near-life experiences where they're not, stepping into that place. But made me ask a new question, why am I here? Why am I struggling like this? And I didn't have an answer. Just like, man, I have a really slow brain. And then at that time, the nurse came in with a mug of tea, and it had a picture of the same one, the person I did the book report on, was Albert Einstein. And it was like, and there was a quote on there. I felt like he was speaking to me. It said, the same level of thinking that's created your problem won't solve your problem. And I was like, well, what's my problem? I was like, I have a very slow learner. I'm a very slow brain. It's like, well, how do I think differently about it? Well, maybe I could learn how to learn faster. Maybe I could learn how to have a faster brain. And I put my studies aside, and I just started studying learning. learning how to learn. I think it's a superpower. If there's one skill to master in the 21st century, with all this change that's going on, rapid change, it's the only constant is just how do you learn it and absorb it and think differently and apply it. And so I started studying neuroscience, adult learning theory, multiple intelligences, anything I get my hands on, mnemonics, speed reading, everything. And then about 60 days into it, a light switch went on and I started to understand things for the very first time. I mean, it was just like, and I remember, I never talk about this, but I remember the moment it happened. It was, we were in class, it was about 300 people in a lecture center. And back then there were these overhead projectors, right? And with these, and like with these pulling and the professor put something on the overhead projector and, a few seconds into it, I just start laughing. And I'm so quiet. I'm the quiet one in class. I do everything to not, like if I was to have one superpower back in school, it was invisibility. Like I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard, but I didn't want the spotlight, And so because, when you're broken and you feel like you're not enough, you don't want that attention. But I start laughing out loud, really loud, and everyone turns around and looks at me. And I'm freaking out, like, oh my goodness, because I didn't realize it. And then about 30 seconds into it, other people started laughing. There was this ripple effect, and we were laughing at what was on the screen, but I had just read it and learned it really fast, right, at that moment. And I didn't realize it at the time.
Wow.
But with my grades, when my grades improved, my life improved. And here's the thing, when my inspiration really was my desperation. How I ended up on this path all those years ago was I couldn't help but help other people, right? You talk about your passion, and my passion became learning, but my purpose also became teaching, sharing it with other people, because I felt really upset that I wasn't taught this back in school, and I had to go through all that suffering and struggling every single day, sometimes crying myself to sleep, not feeling I was enough. And so I started helping other individuals, and I don't share this story very often, but I didn't know how to help other individuals. So I was like, okay, I was walking and like doing this meditation around campus, and I noticed there was this classroom that wasn't being used late at night on a Thursday night. And I was like, okay, next week, I'm gonna put 5 or 10 people in that room, teach them for free, and then maybe afterwards, 1 or 2 of them wanna be my students, and I could tutor them. And then I go back to my dorm room and I take out a piece of paper and I write, free speed reading memory tips, get better grades in less time, Thursday, 7 p.m. And the next morning, this is like my first opportunity to share this. The next morning I make some photocopies, and on the way to class, just put some around the campus, not a lot. And then fast forward to Thursday, 7 o'clock, I'm walking around the hallway. I'm just hoping 5 people showed up, were interested in this. And I turn the corner and there's a crowd of people outside the door. And I'm freaking out because I was like, oh, I hope whatever's going on ends soon so I can do my thing. And I go up to there and there's this crowd of people and I can't even see inside because there's this big tall guy. I was like tapping on him, like, what's going on inside? He's like, there's a speed reading class. And honest to God, Jay, I was like, wow, what a coincidence. What are the odds there's another speed reading class, the same room, the same night, the same time? And I push my way in and there's rooms full of people standing in the back, but nobody's teaching. And it takes my slow brain all that time to realize why they're all there. And I do a head count, and instead of 5 or 10 people, there's 110 people. Now, keep in mind, I'm phobic of public speaking. I'm 18 years old. I look, like really young. I'm wearing t-shirts, shorts. I have nothing prepared to talk about. And there's teaching assistants in there, graduate students. And my heart's beating out of my chest. I can't even breathe. And so I leave because I can't do it. And I will go to this, the fountain, and I've always meditated in my life. It's just something more in my nature because I spent so much time in my imagination to myself as an introvert. And when I was meditating, I heard this voice inside my head, and it's my mom's. And she says, I won't tell you exactly what she says, but essentially it's like 100 people came out because you promised to help them, and you're disappointing them, you're disappointing me. And I'm doing this walking meditation back to my dorm room, and I stop. And I take one step back to the classroom. And isn't it interesting that one step in another direction can completely change your destination or your destiny, right?
Absolutely.
And I go back, and honestly, as a memory expert, it's embarrassing. I don't even remember what I talked about. I mean, I don't know how you are on stage, but sometimes it just flows, through you,
Those are the
right?
best days.
Yeah. And I remember, on stage with Wayne Dyer, he's like, he never preps. He just prays the servant, just comes right through. But after 2 hours, I come out of this trance, And I was just like, okay. But I remember what I said then consciously. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could help everybody here, but it'll take about 10 hours for me to teach you some of the things that I'm doing, 2 hours a week, over the next 5 weeks. And I just said, I get $30 an hour to teach this, because that's what I got teaching tennis back in high school. If you're interested, I'll be in the student center tomorrow at noon. And then I swear to you, Jay, 100 people just get up and they leave, and didn't know, no interaction at all. And I feel two things. Number one, I feel completely confused. I'm just like, what happened? Did everyone just not? What did I say while this was going on? And was I a complete idiot? And then the other feeling I had was complete exhaustion. Because when you get yourself to do something you never thought you could do, like, whether it's public speaking or talking to that person that you're always, you're attracted to, or starting that business or jumping out of that plane or whatever, I was completely exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically. And I end up falling asleep on the floor, on that carpet. It was the best sleep of my life I've ever had to this day. And I get woken up by the class coming in the next morning. And it's scary. You're like drooling on yourself, looking up and seeing class students. And I run back to my dorm room and I shower, I go to breakfast, go to class. 12 o'clock comes. I promised people I'd be in the student center. I run there and I just hope one person is there. And when I get there, that crowd is there, showed up. And at the end of about an hour or two, 71 of the 100 kids signed up for a program that didn't even exist. And it was at a price point of $300 because I didn't even do the math, because I wasn't doing it for the money. It was like 71 times $300. Because I didn't realize kids could go to the ATM machine and take out $300, because I didn't have an ATM card. I didn't have that. I never saw $300 in my life. And so now I'm not even 19 years old, and I have $21,000 cash in my backpack. And I go back to my mentor, his wisdom, saying, don't let school get in the way of your education. And I feed my body because I lost all that weight. But mostly I use that to invest in feeding my mind. And I buy every book, every audio cassette at that time. There's no, everything wasn't digital. I traveled the world to learn my craft. And the reason why I do this today is because one of those students, 71 young adults, she was a freshman. She read 30 books in 30 days. I mean, can you imagine going online and picking up 30 books, and just absorbing, not skim it, but just really understood it. And I wanted to find out not how, but why, going back to motivation. And I found out that her mother was dying of terminal cancer and was only given 60 days to live, 2 months to live. Doctors, and so I wished her well, prayers. 6 months later, I get a call from this young lady. She's crying and crying, crying. I can't get a word out of her. And I find out they're tears of joy, that her mother not only survived, but is really getting better. Doctors don't know how or why. They called it a miracle. But her mother attributed 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books. And that's where I realized at that moment, if knowledge is power, learning is your superpower. And it's a superpower we all have inside of us. And I devoted my life to showing people how to unlock and unleash it.
Wow.
So I get a little choked up
much
thinking about that. But that's my mission, the boy with the broken brain. I just want no brain left behind.
Yeah.
I want to show people really what they're capable of, and that we all have genius inside of us. That it's not how smart you are; it's really how are you smart. And we've had this conversation, and that's what I feel like people are looking for. That.
Yeah, I love that, man. Listening to it in full like that, and I'm sure there's so much more. But thank you so much for sharing those stories as well. They're really powerful, and the genuineness and sincerity with which you're doing this just comes across really naturally. I can feel the energy. It's not even and I already knew that about you, but it's not about anything else apart from no brain left behind. I love that. But yeah, let's look at that a bit more, and I want to unpack parts of that story, because I think that a lot of people are listening right now or watching right now, and they're saying, Jim, I feel exactly how you felt.
Yeah.
Right? I was the same. I never felt I liked reading growing up because we only read fiction books at school. And I've never been a fan of certain types of fiction that we were exposed to at school.
Okay.
And when I got exposed to nonfiction when I was 14, I got fascinated with reading, and I just kept reading and reading and reading because I loved reading about real people and real stories. And at the same time, I've been fascinated by superheroes or magic, but we never read books like that, fiction books like that at school.
Right.
So I also had challenges with what I loved and what I didn't love and what I believed. So our biggest challenges, you know this, I know this, are around our beliefs, are around what we believe is possible.
Right.
You had from 8 years old to 18, that seems like a really tough time in your life in terms of your projections of yourself, your beliefs about yourself. What is your advice now to people who have those limiting beliefs? How do they start that journey or that process of opening up their minds or whatever you feel is right for them?
I really do feel this is one of the most important conversations people could be having right now, because to create any kind of results in our life, we need to behave a certain way. But in order to do a behavior, we need a belief that enables that to happen. And I think the nature of a lot of the work that we do is about transcending. When I say we, I mean everyone who's here in this community. It's about transcend. It's about ending the trance, ending this mass hypnosis through marketing, through media that says that you're broken. You know, exactly what I experienced as a child, that you need to be fixed, that there is something wrong with you. And I feel like, you know, all this fear of not feeling like you're enough is at the root of a lot of challenges, because in actuality, we're not so much a thermometer reacting to the environment all the time as we are a thermostat. And our beliefs are kind of like the temperature we're setting. And when we set a goal or a belief or a vision for something, you know, the environment changes. But I think people make the kind of money that they believe that they are worth, that they are in the kind of relationship or lack thereof, maybe because of what they believe about, you know, relationships, or they believe about who they are and how valuable that they are, or maybe even the state of health, right? That the power of a belief or placebo, that people could change the level of health just by having a certain thought. And we know that there's a biology to belief also as well. And so what I know in my experience of having students in over 180 countries, working with children with the most severe learning challenges to adults, you know, I never talk about this. My grandmother died of Alzheimer's, you know, and so that affects your beliefs when you're a child, along with my brain injury, labeled a broken brain. I remember going to see my grandmother, and she would call me by my brother's name. You know, I would remember talking to my grandmother about something, and then 2 minutes later, we're talking about the same exact thing. And people who know, you know, who have had this experience, and who doesn't know somebody who has, you know, who has been affected by dementia or Alzheimer's, it's like you lose your mind, you lose part of, you know, who you are, your identity. And so all those things affect your belief about what is possible. So the reason why I do these demonstrations on stage is to really shake up what people feel is possible. But I know, and this is what research shows, that regardless of your age, your background, your career, your education, your financial situation, your gender, your history, your IQ, only about 1/3, according to research, is your intellect, your potential, your memory is predetermined by genetics and biology, but 2/3 is in your control. Now, some people would say 100% is in your control, you know, epigenetics and your beliefs, the power of it. But at research, you know, traditional research saying 2/3 is, you have more influence than you think. That it's not
2/3 is good enough.
Exactly. That it's, you know, the whole mindset between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is that it's not set. Like your IQ, when you take an IQ test when you're a child, it's not what you're set for life. It's not fixed like your shoe size. And plus, you know, the beliefs around IQ, people feel like that's a standardized test this is your potential. I mean, that's ludicrous, right? That something like that is set. And so I think when we're talking about beliefs, all of it has to do with our culture and what our influences, what we're imprinted on early on. And I also believe part of it has to do with our self-talk. I remember I was preparing to run a marathon, you know, with a name like Kwik, and people talk about my name. I didn't change my name to do what I do. It's my father's name, my grandfather's name.
That's so cool.
You know, and so it's something that I was born with, and I would say that when I was running this marathon, I read this chapter in a book on the psychology of it, and it said this word for word, because I'm a memory expert. It said, your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. And you know, I always tell people, your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. It's always listening. You know this. If people knew how powerful their minds were, like right now, when people are listening to this, you have hundreds of millions of neurons firing off. And they say a person's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions, right? Neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, we're always, thoughts that, brain cells that wire together, they fire together, they wire together, these thoughts are things. And so I would say if you knew how powerful your minds really were, you wouldn't have a thought or say something you didn't want to be true. Now, that's not to say you have one negative thought and it ruins your life, right? Any more than eating a donut ruins your life,
Yes.
your body. But it's the habit of doing it, right? We talk about habits like meditation and working out and eating right and gratitude. But, what about the habits of our feelings, the emotional habits that we have? What about the habits of our thoughts that the things we're saying to ourselves all the time inside? Like I have a friend, I feel like we ask these things all the time. We have these thoughts that we have to be conscious of in order to change. But and we have certain thoughts that are just constant, like these dominant ones. And I remember a friend of mine, we went through this exercise, and her primary thought is, how do I get people to like me?
Wow.
Like, can you imagine if you ask yourself hundreds of times a day, consciously or unconsciously, how do I get people to like me? Like, Jay, you don't know this person. You don't know her age, her background, her career, her financial. You don't know anything about her, but you know everything about her, right? If somebody's asking them constantly, like themselves, how do I get people to like me? What's that person like? Like, what's their personality like? They're a people pleaser. Their personality is changing depending on who they're spending time with. Right. They're a martyr. They're always looking to serve, and you know all that stuff because you know one of their thoughts, because thoughts are things. And so I would ask people to evaluate, your beliefs, your self-talk, because it runs these programs. And it's so once you're conscious of it, you can make changes. Like, I don't have a great memory yet. A simple 3-letter word at the end of a sentence changes everything because words have power. There's even that little pet peeve I have is that, people talk about nice and they talk about kind, but those are two completely different things, like night and day, in terms of what motivates somebody who's nice. A person who's nice could treat somebody who's going through a bad day or a homeless person, they could treat them nice. But somebody who's kind is different. They invest their time, there's caring, there's work. A nice person does things when they have the time. A kind person they make the time to do things, right? A nice person is more...
It's a beautiful distinction.
Externally motivated, meaning somebody who's nice, usually sometimes they placate. They don't want to create waves. They don't want to upset anybody. Because they don't want to look bad, but somebody who's kind, they're more internally motivated, and they do what's right because out of caring and compassion. Because a nice person might not recognize the broccoli in your teeth because they don't want to create anything, but a kind person will be like, hey, you got something there, or they'll call you on your stuff and they'll tell you what you need to hear because they'll speak the truth because they're not trying to get validation.
That's a beautiful.
And so, like little distinctions in words, even things like. People say all the time, I got to pick up the kids. I got to journal today. I got to meditate. But you change that word got to get. Oh my goodness, I get to pick up my kids. I get to work out today. I get to eat right. I get to meditate. So, those words affect how we think, and they affect our core beliefs. And so I would say one of the fundamental places to changing that belief is to really be conscious of your thoughts, especially those automatic, they call them ants, automatic negative thoughts, right? We want to be able to squash those ants because it's definitely good for your brain.
I love that. Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's incredible how simple it sounds and seems, even though it has such a profound effect on us. Right?
Yeah.
It has such a profound effect. Like adding that 3-letter word yet.
Right.
Right? Just that small thing can have such a huge impact. But we need to give this attention in our lives because otherwise that negative self-talk has been playing for so long that it could just keep going on in the background.
Right. And we don't even know where it came from, even right. when we're children. So we're not, and I feel like that in order to be able to make any kind of change, you have to recognize what it is. Otherwise, then we're at the effect of it. Then we're going back to being a thermometer, if you were, and that would be the big challenge. But then, and you would call it fate when it's really, you get this awareness, having those distinctions.
Absolutely, and we have to think about what we also want to invest in learning too.
Of course,
because I feel like the pressure of. I remember you've just made me think of this when you were talking about your school experience. Every year in my high school, so secondary school, we call it secondary school, you call it high school. We used to get ranked for every subject out of 180 students and it would be put up in front of everyone.
Mm.
So you'd be ranked against everyone in your peer group out of 180 in every single subject in school. So math,
Wow.
English, biology, chemistry, physics, art, design, English, history, geography, politics, whatever it was. And then you'd be able to see where you were. And I remember there were certain subjects like philosophy, art and design, economics, where I would always perform well. I'd always probably be in the top 5, 3, and 1 more often than not in those subjects. And then subjects like math and English, I was always pretty high. But things like math and geography, I was always kind of in the middle or maybe towards the latter half. And it's interesting how that we amplify that which we're not good at.
That's interesting.
Right? It's like saying, for example, you were giving the broccoli example, but imagine you dress up to go out to an event.
Right.
And everyone at the event was just like, oh, Jim, I love your shoes. I love that t-shirt. I love the slogan. And then you get one person who comes up to you and says, Jim, that slogan makes no sense. And we go home amplifying that one person who said that makes no sense. Why does that happen? And how do we stop that happening? How do we stop the mind from doing that? Because I actually think more people receive compliments, they receive encouragement, they're receiving support, but actually our mind tricks us into amplifying and magnifying the one negative piece. It's like in your comments, I'm sure you see it.
Yeah.
When you're scrolling through your comments, your mind naturally goes to the critical ones.
Right, right.
And we see so many social media people, so many influencers, so many models, actors, actresses who get consumed by the negative comments on their feeds.
Yeah.
So how do we stop that from happening?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about this digital age. I feel like it serves and enabled. I love knowing what you're up to, and it's great for staying up to date with friends and family and learning and inspiration. And I love that. And we talk about superheroes and superpowers, but there could be like this super villain in that this digital age. We have digital overload, too much to learn, too little time. We have digital distraction. I mean, goodness. When we're picking up our phone, every dopamine fix from every like, share, comment, everything. And then you have digital dementia relying on your phone, and it just does everything for you. So you don't have to use your mental faculties as much. So, we're so dependent on that. But then there's this digital depression that's coming from comparison, right? Sometimes we see all the good stuff and we focus on the bad, or we see the highlight, curated, filtered life of everyone's incredible life, and know that you don't see the struggle sometimes as much. And that's why I can appreciate your work, because it brings it's full and it's rich, full spectrum. And I think that one of the challenges is part of your brain through survival, you have this reticular activating system because right now there's 2 billion stimuli we could be focusing on. You would go stark raving mad if you did, right? That flood of information, that noise, if you will. So we could only pay attention to a small bite of information. At Harvard, George Miller says it's 7 plus or minus 2, 5 to 9 bits you could consciously be aware. And so what do we become aware of? And you're right, a lot of that stuff is the criticisms. It's the negative stuff that you want to protect yourself from, because it's feeding that fear that we're not enough, right? And then you start asking those kind of questions because you can delete. So primarily your brain, people don't realize, it's a deletion device. It's trying to keep things out, right? So it deletes, it distorts, and it generalizes. And all of a sudden you see one bad comment out of a flood of maybe 100 people are rooting for you. And then you obsess about that one thing, and then you generalize like that's the real thing. And it's kind of interesting when it comes to your happiness, because I feel like people who are generally happy will focus, on the glass half full, as opposed, because at any moment there are negative, we could always be sad and depressed and not feel good enough because there's plenty of stuff to focus on, but just also right now there are, people getting married. There are people having, babies. There are people who are learning new things and starting new careers. So it really is a matter of focus. And I think, I did this podcast episode where I was in the power plant, and I tell this story about a power plant that's very active, and one day it just shuts down. Out in the middle of nowhere, just shuts down. And the employees are running around, they're frantic with their heads cut off. And finally, the operations manager after 3 hours says, okay, we got to get some outside help. They call a local technician. Technician's like, you're lucky, I'm right around the corner. Technician shows up, and he surveys the power plant for about a few minutes. And there's full of beams everywhere. He goes to one specific beam, and on there's all these electrical boxes. He goes to one specific electrical box. He puts a big X with a magic marker on it. He opens it up, and there are all these bolts and wires and screws. He goes to one specific screw, and he turns it not a quarter of an inch, and all of a sudden the whole power plant lights up again. And the operations manager like, thank you, you saved our business, you saved the day. How much do I owe you? He was like, that will be $10,000. And he's like, what? You were here for 5 minutes. All you did was turn a screw. He's like, how can you even justify that? It's like, give me an itemized bill. He's like, no problem. Technician reaches in his back pocket, takes out a piece of paper, scribbles on it, tears off the sheet, gives it to him. And he's like, oh, I understand. He goes to his desk, writes a check for $10,000, hands it to the man. And he basically, and you look at the invoice, if you will, and it says, turning screw, $1. Knowing what screw to turn, $9,999. And the lesson is for people who are listening is not that you have a screw loose, is that little things can make a big difference, right? It's like that. It's what I call a focal point or a force multiplier, where it's the same amount of input, multiple output, or the lead domino, if you will, that could hit a lot of dominoes. And the same thing applies to our focus and our thoughts. And I would say at the core level, people are trying to change their behavior at all times, right? They want to change, they want to stop smoking, they want to meditate, they want to go for walks or do something with their kids. But you struggle, and willpower only goes so far, right? But above that level is this level of capability, and that's why, people, like you say, doing the deep work, because people avoid the deep work. But if you don't do that, if you procrastinate, put things off, and you just do the easy things, life is hard. We know that. But if you do the hard things, life becomes easier, right? So the capability. So check, do you have the skill set on how to be able to do that behavior of stop smoking or meditation and such? Because there's a confidence loop that the more competent you get, capable, the more confident you get.
Totally.
And then you're more likely to do it and get better. So it's positive momentum. But the level above that is the conversation we've been having about beliefs and values. Because maybe somebody wants the behavior of let's say, meditating every single day. And maybe they even we're trained, right, to do it in capabilities, but the belief is, I can't quiet my mind. Or maybe the value is they don't value being still and silent with themselves or being present with themselves. Or maybe the behavior is they want to remember names better, right? And they went through one of our podcasts or something and they got the capability, but the belief is I have a horrible memory, right? Or the value is I don't really care about people. And so that's going to affect the behavior, but people are trying to force it and try to remember names when they should be addressing a different level. But the level above beliefs and values is this level of identity. And, you've addressed this before. It's like the two most powerful words in the English language, the shortest words, I am. Because whatever you put after that is, because if somebody, let's say their behavior is they want to stop smoking, but they, and maybe they have the capability to do it. They even have beliefs or values around health, but their identity is, I am a smoker. That's going to be a hard change to make. Or maybe they want to stop procrastinating, but their identity is, I am a procrastinator. That could be a big challenge for a lot of people. And the last level, I would say, below behavior is this level of environment. And the environment really is like, let's say somebody has the behavior of they want to, do something like meditate, but their environment doesn't allow them to have time for themselves. Or maybe they want to read 30 minutes a day, but their environment doesn't have, it's too dark or whatever. Now, the big thing, going back to pull this all full circle, is the power of beliefs. We talked about the power of questions, because your questions determine what you're focusing on. Your reticular activating system, what do you focus on is most real. Now in school, you learn there are 6 major core questions, right? 5 W's and the H. So look at this again, these levels of transformation. Identity answers the question of who, right? Beliefs and values answers the question of why. Capabilities answers the question of how. Behavior answers the question of what. And the environment answers the question of when and where. So when you're looking to make complete change, whether it's getting people to read 3 times faster, remember names, be able to learn another language, be able to meditate, be able to, do any kind of change, start that business, you want to make sure all those levels are aligned. Then you have alignment here, mind, body, and life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that alignment, that point you just made at the end there is unbelievable, because I couldn't agree with you more. Just looking back, it's funny when you've studied something at school and we just take it as like,
right.
It was cute and fun. But when you actually break it down, like you just explained it, and I recommend everyone who is listening, go listen back to that, what Jim just said, because I think it was Gandhi who said that when what you think, what you say, and what you do are aligned, then you experience harmony in life.
Yeah, and I love that word harmony, because a lot of people, they talk about balance, and it's going back to like and kind. Somebody who's nice and kind. There's a difference
Harmony and
between
balance.
balance and harmony. Like so many people, I want a balanced life, but balance, when you look up the definition, it's balance is like an equality, like an equal amount of time and effort. But I don't want to spend the same amount of time at work as I do working out with the kids and everything. So you don't want an equality there of time, but you want harmony, like an orchestra, right? Like you have not every single instrument or person has equal amount of time, but they come together and they create this incredible symphony. And I feel like we could do that with our life also as well.
And I think that exactly is what you just said. Everything we're talking about has just been brought back full circle, because our mindset about our life is, I need everything to be balanced. I need to fit this in. Like the language around, I need to fit something in.
Right.
Or I need to make time for this, right? And it puts pressure, artificial pressure, and then it feels like we can't balance. Balance kind of feels like you're juggling.
Right, or spinning lots of plates or something.
Yeah, spinning lots of plates. That doesn't feel like a great visualization for the mind or a mindset. And then what you've just said, that actually shifting balance to harmony.
Right.
And you start thinking about it like an orchestra.
Right.
It's like, oh, wow.
And
Okay,
then,
so, the string quartet is playing for that long, percussion comes in then, et cetera, et cetera. And it all of a sudden, even the visualization of that just calms the heartbeat right down.
I do an annual Quick Brain event, and we had in our audience Quincy Jones. We actually had Quincy Jones, Don Miguel Ruiz from, we're at the Four Agreements. I mean, the founder work, but they're all sitting and I just Quincy comes up and he's 85 years old. And I was like, tell me about, everyone talks about successes. We are the world, everything. I want, what are your biggest struggles? What are the problems you went through and you had to overcome? He's like, Jim, I don't have any problems. I'm like, what? Everybody has problems. If you don't have any problems, you're 6 feet under, right? Yeah. He's like, no, I don't have any problems. I have puzzles. Another change in word and languaging, and all of a sudden, for me, a puzzle is like fun. Puzzle has a solution to it. It's something that I could take on. So that languaging plays a big role. Even when people are going back to that levels of transformation using words, people say, I am busy. This is such a pet peeve of mine, just like nice and kindness, is people say, how's things? I'm just so busy. And it's like they get this secondary gain of, significance, because the meta level message you're sending somebody when you're busy, saying you're busy, it's like, oh, I'm really important and successful. And for me, people will have this badge of honor saying they're busy all the time. And then they wonder, they design their whole life around being busy, and they wonder why they're stressed all the time, that they have anxiety, they're not getting any sleep. But we're constantly programming it with our thoughts all the time.
What's your switch for busy? I have one too.
Do you have one? What do you use?
Mine's productive.
I like that. I like that.
Mine's productive. So when someone says, how's your week been? I'm like, it's been productive. Because when I say productive, I feel empowered. I feel I've been effective.
And with what we teach, people, I don't share this publicly, but I have very bad sleep apnea. And so besides my learning challenges, so my two biggest challenges growing up as a kid were learning and public speaking. And the universe has a sense of humor, because what I do every day is public speak on learning. But of recent, I've been struggling with sleep apnea. And usually it's caused by someone being overweight, because they have this excess weight around their neck, so it's hard to breathe. And that's not my case. It's it's genetic. And I stop breathing 200 times a night. And each time is at least 10 seconds. So, I went to UCLA, and they're like, no wonder the doctor's like, it's like you're not sleeping. It's like somebody coming in with a pillow and suffocating you 200 times a night, and I'm waking up because I can't breathe. And I use a CPAP device, a dental device. I flew down to spend 2 weeks with John of God in Brazil. I've done all of this stuff, but I do believe that if anyone's watching this or listening to this right now, that the question I ask, we're talking about the power of questions and beliefs, is that there's a gift in every struggle. And I ask myself, where's the gift in this? People talk about post-traumatic stress, and I've had post-traumatic stress. We've all had loss. We've all had, loss of loved ones, loss of relationships, financial issues, health issues. But I believe that post-traumatic stress, what people don't realize, there's also post-traumatic growth. That some people, and I am sure you could identify this, and a lot of your community can also, is that you've gone through adversity and difficulty, and it's something you would never wish upon another soul. But those people come out on the other side. Some people will say, I honestly wouldn't change it. As hard as it was going through it, I have a new meaning in my life, a new strength, a new clarity, a new life purpose or mission, and that sculpts my soul, because I believe that difficult times, they could diminish you, they could define you, or they could develop you. And ultimately, we decide, and that's the power we have. That whether or not you believe in fate, certain things that meant to happen, we also have free will to decide what to focus on, what things mean, also as well. So with this sleep apnea, my gift from it is I search it. I'm like, what, if I'm only sleeping 2 hours a night, it's not like I gained 6 hours of productivity. You're talking about being productive. But my gift is, number one, it's forced me to double down on everything I teach. So I have to be very highly productive. So I could read faster and be, all the stuff that I teach and learn, because I'm at this disadvantage. So I live, we had started this conversation with the life you live are the lessons you teach, and so I could roll out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and do this, because all I have to do is tell people what I'm doing, because I don't have to rehearse it, because I live it, just like yourself and everyone watching this. But the other thing is, not only is it the gift was me learning these skills and developing the capability, it's forced me to be very protective of my time. So we're talking about being busy. Everything in my life is heaven yes or heaven no. Like right now, there's nowhere I'd rather be than right here with you. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people who are stressed and overloaded, it's self-inflicted, because they are self-opting in, saying yes way too much. And we've all read that book, Good to Great. Say no to good so you can say yes to great. But a lot of people have too many tabs open in their life. They're saying yes, yes, yes. And a lot of people in this community also do that, because they're martyrs. They're helping their friends, their family, their loved ones, their customers, their clients, but they're not taking care of themselves. And we've all heard self-love and self-care is not selfish, that you have to give, to yourself before you could give to somebody else. And what I would say to everyone, maybe this is a wake-up call, saying that if you have opportunity stress, you're saying yes way too much, is to take care, say no to things so you can say yes to yourself. And that's what I've learned to be able to do, with myself, because I don't have infinite energy because of my sleep and everything that comes from that. And so, through struggles, could lead to strengths, could lead to superpowers for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. You've helped so many thousands of people through your teaching, lectures, courses online, and so many influential people. I mean, you've worked with everyone from like Elon Musk to Will Smith to Quincy Jones was at your event, which I didn't know. But all of these incredible people you've helped and helped them learn. What have they taught you in the process? What have you learned from them?
So I learned something from everyone. With Quincy, not only was it, he's amazing when people find their passion, they use it for purpose. But one of the things I learned from him is the power of perspective. People don't realize this, but when I was, I've celebrated 8 of his past 10 birthdays, and we talk about things. We stay up way late in the night, and he speaks 23 languages, which is extraordinary. So there's definitely a correlation between music and languages, that part of your brain, if you will. But what I've learned from him is the power of perspective, meaning he has this phrase saying, you have to go to know, meaning he travels all around the world because he really, I don't think there would be any kind of prejudice, with other people. People just travel more, in their mind, even if it's from books or anything, because when you're exposed to culture and language and food and different things, you learn a deep appreciation for it. So you don't have to tolerate it. Tolerance is one thing, but you could actually appreciate and acknowledge and be more accepting of things and notice that the patterns of how we're all the same also. So the power of perspective. And, even when I went to my friend's house when I was, ready to quit school, that perspective of changing place and people, because when you change place, you have a different perspective. So I encourage anyone who's struggling right now with a difficult decision or a different situation to step out of it and change your place, meaning just even going for a walk, helps, but also changing your people, because everyone's heard that who you spend time with is who you become. You spend time with 9 broke people, you become the 10th, right? But there's a real neuroscience reason. You have mirror neurons, which is your imitation cells that are always imitating what other people are doing. That's why we empathize so well when we're watching a movie. We can feel scared when the person's going through a scary moment, or sports, you can feel what they're feeling. But we also, when we imitate though, also are those things, their capabilities, their beliefs. We start imitating their values. That's why it's better well done than it is well said for parenting. Certainly it's not people don't. And then even in online, I think people who are most successful, like yourself, is they don't just say it, they show it. They don't promise it, they prove it. And I feel like that, the things that we do is teaches people more than anything else, especially for children who don't learn. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you say. They'll literally forget what you say, and they'll forget what you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel, through your example. And so I've learned that from Quincy. From Elon and I actually bonded over sci-fi, our love of sci-fi books, going back to fiction. A lot of people, and I really
love sci-fi fiction, but we never had that in school.
I know. And so so many people in our community, they read nonfiction books, and I totally appreciate that. If somebody has decades of experience, they put it into a book, and you can sit down in a couple of days or a few days and read that book, you can download decades and days, leaders or readers completely. But so much research is coming out saying if people spend more time reading fiction, it helps with imagination, creativity. By the way, everyone's job right now, because of where this digital age is going, you think about AI, artificial intelligence, you think about automation, everything's being outsourced, right? To Asia. So those are the 3 A's: automation, Asia, and artificial intelligence. So where's our humanity here? It's what makes us special. Things that computers aren't going to do. Imagination. Right? Imagination is power. Yes. Einstein said that. What about creativity? Right? Creativity is the future belongs to the creatives.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not taught in school. School teaches you what to learn: math, history, science, Spanish, important class on what to learn, but no class on how to learn. They teach you what to learn and what to think, not how to learn and how to think. Where are the classes on imagination, creativity, listening, concentration, focus, all these different areas? I always thought just, at least remembering, teach people how to remember what they learn. Reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's, but what about recall, retention? Socrates says learning is remembering, because if we lost half of our memories, we lose a big part of who we are. And the other reason why is I was doing this program at Google, and somebody said, Jim, why do I have to remember all this? It's on our search engine. And this is the truth. If our life is a reflection of the decisions we've made up to this point, the sum of all our decisions, but we can only make good decisions based on the information that we know and remember. But if we forgot half the words we knew, half the people we knew, half of our expertise, we won't be able to make good decisions for our life, good decisions for our health, good decisions on our relationship and what to do. And so memory really is a superpower. And so with Elon, I read this book. We were bonding over this book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution, and by the other thing you get from reading fiction is not only creativity and imagination, but also empathy. When you're identifying with the persons in there, you get to feel what they're feeling. That builds emotional intelligence. So we bonded over Ender's Game and all these great sci-fi books. But then a book we were talking about, The Structure of Scientific Revolution, which basically says that all innovation from every industry, fashion, technology, automotive, comes from somebody usually outside the industry, because it takes somebody from the outside who didn't grow up with the same limiting beliefs and education as someone traditional to look in and say, why aren't you guys doing it like this? So that outside perspective, I learned from Elon. Stanley recently passed, and he was a real superhero in my life. I was there through many times, even when he got his Hollywood star of fame, and different moments. The reason why I was, I taught myself how to read, 4 years. It took me a long time by reading comic books. Something about the superhero journey brought that the illustrations, the story brought it to life, words to life for me. So he's responsible for teaching me literacy. And for me, Stan represents, I'll give you 3 things. For me, he represents play. Because at 95, even because I was with him recently, his later years, he was the youngest old person I knew. You know what I mean? And I think that's so important, because a lot of people say they stop playing because they grew older, but it's the opposite. You grow older because you stop playing. And he was so playful, so play is a huge lesson for me. The second P I would say is passion. He found his passion. To his later years, even when most people have retired, he had 2 passions. Number one, he still went to work 9 to 5 well into his 80s, and early 90s, because he loves telling stories, because he found his passion. And his other passion was his wife, who was 1 year older. Yeah. So what a role model that is for me. And then finally, the third P is his purpose. He turned his passion of superheroes, and he turned it into a real purpose, meaning superheroes. You know what the underlining thing about superheroes is for us? I feel like the lesson is one person can make a difference.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
With all their flaws,
Exactly.
with all their mistakes.
Exactly. And the most famous superheroes out there, they had the biggest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of my favorite superheroes, they were orphans. Spider-Man was orphaned, Superman was orphaned, Wonder Woman's orphaned, Batman was orphaned, you know, Iron Man orphaned. You know, they had the biggest difficulties, you know, and
that's the same thing I love about superheroes.
And they really represent hope. You know, look to the sky. You know, one person, we could all make a difference, and that's purpose for me. Even I was a big supporter of the Stan Lee Foundation, and it was all we did is we brought entertainment. What Stan did is brought entertainment into the classroom because he knew education by itself is it's boring. You know, you can't just lecture to somebody. Kids don't learn just by consuming; they learn through creating. You know, and you talk about this a lot. Education is one thing, but education. If you want real empowerment, you meld education with entertainment. Then you have that empowerment. And Stan was epic on that. The lessons he taught, even back in the 60s, you know, when we lost, you know, Martin Luther King and, you know, Kennedy and everything, he talked about bigotry, like back in the 60s, you know, Stan. So he was a real role model because for me, when we're talking about play, we're talking about passion, we're talking about purpose, it also is about making a difference. You know, superheroes, just having a superpower doesn't make you a superhero.
Totally.
Right? Somebody can have a superhero power. And I'm not talking about superpowers of leaping tall buildings and shooting lasers out of your eyes. We all have our own super unique abilities, our unique talents, you know, our unique strengths. But just having those don't make you a superhero. You have to use those powers to make a difference.
Totally.
To make the world a better place. And that's what he did through his foundation.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And his
and
work.
Big honor to him and his incredible work. And teaching so many lessons through superheroes, whether it's comics or movies. I feel exactly the same way. The reason why I love superheroes, superhero movies and comics is because I literally look at that and go, they've all got flaws. They've had really challenging lives, but they're still trying to save the world. And they're working together. Right? They also collaborate.
Together.
They work together.
That's huge.
With all of their flaws and with their different traits. They're not, you know, one superhero is not looking at the other one going, oh, I wish I had lasers coming out my eyes.
Right.
They're happy and confident in their own power and ability, but at the same time, they can appreciate the need for the other one.
Yeah, and that's kind of like any kind of relationship, even in a marriage or in your team, you know, your organization. You know, they talk about getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seats.
Yes.
And then we're all driving, you know, through this vision together. But I believe that the greatest thing, I mean, I love books, but I think a single conversation with somebody could go so deep. And so I'm naming famous people like, you know, like a Richard Branson or you know, because the reason why though is not to drop names is because it creates these mnemonic triggers. So when you see this, like for example, with Jim Carrey, you know, I help actors speed read scripts or memorize their lines better. And I remember we were in his kitchen, we're making guacamole, which is, by the way, great brain food. Avocado is great for your brain. And I asked him, like, you know, why do you do what you do? Going back to purpose and mission. And he was like, Jim, I act like a complete fool on camera and so extreme because I want to give people watching permission to be themselves. He's like, my mission is to free people from the concern of other people. Wow. And I really do believe, Jay, that, you know, we could go broke buying into the opinions and expectations of other people. That if we're being energized by people's, you know, fueled by other people's opinions, then we could run out of fuel and gas really, really, really fast. And I think one of the things that represses our ability to express ourselves at the highest level is, you know, I spent a lot, because I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, I spent a lot of time in nursing homes, still to this day, to senior centers, not teaching them memory tricks, but really showing them, you know, having them share these stories and, you know, so we could polish off their memories. But the biggest regret at that age, you know, when people are passing or, you know, that when they have limited amount of time is their biggest regret is, you know, not living their life. I believe, Jay, for people to feel truly fulfilled and happy, they want to have the curiosity to know themselves, but then also the courage to be themselves. You know, the curiosity to know yourself. You reflect, you journal, you meditate, you go through all these personal growth experiences to know who you are. But then once you know more about who you are, you know, being who you are, it takes courage, it takes boldness, because, you know, you don't want to look bad and you don't want to make a mistake. And those are, you know, big challenges people have. And so, you know, I don't want people to have that regret, because if people are scared about looking bad, I think people should use that fear of saying, well, what if you would have done it, it would change your life. What if you would have done it, it would have changed the world.
Absolutely. And we've all been there.
Yeah.
Moments where, even now, where we stop ourselves. I've got 5 last big questions for
Yeah.
you. This is it now. So these are the questions. What was the last thing that you learned for the first time? You probably get asked that a lot.
What was the
What was the last thing you learned for the first time? Like recently, what did you learn for the first time again?
Relearned.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important lessons I've ever learned is that that I am 100% responsible
Nice.
for my life. I constantly get that lesson over and over again, that I'm not a victim, that I am responsible for everything in my life, and I think that's and having that, really serves people.
Awesome. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
This is a big one, right?
Yeah.
I would love to have the superpower of helping other people unleash their superpowers.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about that. Like the ability to superpower to heal other people, because we all know somebody who's struggling right now. Selfishly, it would be the ability to teleport, because you and I travel so much and we've seen each other in so many different countries. So
That's true.
So teleporting would be nice, but the ability to help other people unleash their superpower.
Same. I'm with you on that. I want the same one. Yeah, I feel like that's
I think the world,
yeah.
modern day superheroes, the world, people, the best version of ourselves showing up. Imagine that. Like when you talk about it with team, right, and culture, it's just like, yes, Captain America's great on his own, Thor's great on his own, Iron Man's great on their own, but when they come all together in the Avengers, or Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman come together in the Justice League, it's a different story.
Absolutely. Okay, this question: best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received,
or the one you can remember?
Right. No, I can remember a lot.
Yeah.
I would say going back to my story about my original mentor is not to let school get in the way of your education. That if you didn't perform well in school, then that's okay. That is not how smart you are. It's really how are you smart. And everybody has these gifts.
Totally. Worst advice you've ever given someone?
The worst advice I've ever given somebody? Oh goodness. I would say this. I would say this. This is my favorite advice to give somebody, but then there's the caveat of the worst advice. So I'd say, know yourself, trust yourself, love yourself, be yourself. But if you're a jerk, be somebody else. So don't be that person. So that would be bad advice to give somebody who's a jerk. Don't be that person.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. And if someone wants to become a better learner right now in their life, what's the number one thing that they can do to start that journey?
Yeah, I would say this. Rumi said, sell your cleverness for bewilderment. You know what I mean? Like people do not learn because they feel like they know it all. And we talked about Stan Lee and his age, 95. I believe age is a state of mind, is a state of heart. And if you were, the fastest learners on the planet, they're children. They have the sense of wonder, the sense of bewilderment. They're fascinated. They ask lots of questions. They're not afraid of making mistakes. And, a child could fall 1,000 times to learn how to walk, but sometimes somebody wants to learn how to sing or to dance. They try 1 or 2 times and they have this fear of looking bad.
Yeah.
And I would say trade and sell your cleverness for bewilderment and play a whole lot more.
That is beautiful. We'll end on that. That is Jim Kwik, everyone. Mind blown. Absolutely mind blowing. It was absolutely incredible, man. That was just such a pleasure and joy to listen to you speak and share your stories. Thank you for sharing so openly as well. I know you really
thank you.
went there. Thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who's listening and watching, because I recommend everyone to listen to this one again and watch it again.
Yeah, I would say in parting words is to listen to this, maybe even take a screenshot of this video or podcast and then post it and then tag both of us and then share your big aha. If you want to learn faster, the other thing I would say besides being curious and playful is to teach.
Oh, tell me about that.
When you learn how to, and then you learn with the intention matters.
Yes.
When you learn with the intent of teaching somebody else, you're going to learn it faster because when we teach something, we get to learn it twice. So I would say if it's appropriate, take a screenshot of it, tag us both, but share your big aha or your big learning. So rewatch it, re-listen to it. And that goes a long way. I believe that our life, I compare it to an egg, that if an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. But if it's broken by an inside force, then life begins. And all great things begin on the inside. And everyone here, they have greatness inside of them. They have genius inside of them. And I love shows like yours because it helps people to let it out.
No, absolutely. And it's exactly what you just said. I remember when I was studying as a monk, my biggest inspiration was also a quote from Einstein, who's standing right there behind me. The quote was, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And that's how I would study. I would study saying, how do I simplify this to explain it to someone?
Yeah.
Because if I can explain it to someone, articulate it to them in the way that they can remember it, and they can remember and apply it in their own life again and again and again, then I'll be able to do it too.
Interesting.
If we're not, no, you're living this. Like, you're a great example of this, that if we're not unpacking it in that way, then there's no chance that we can live it. So I love that. Study to learn. I mean, study to learn, yes. Study to learn, and then when you teach, you learn more too.
Yeah. Yeah. So we learn, and then we earn, and then we return.
Thank you so much for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, here's another one I think you'll love.
You don't even know the number of amazing things you do every day. Instead, you focus and ruminate on the one thing you didn't get to, and then you use that as evidence, again, dust on the mirror, to see a human being that's not measuring up and never will, and all that stuff their stupid fourth grade teacher said to you must be true, dust on the mirror. No, you need to interrupt this.